Something you will definitely learn about during your private pilot training is traffic patterns. Traffic patterns are designed to create a standardized flow for traffic to help prevent mid-air collisions. Not all airport traffic patterns are the same, so let's go over what a typical traffic pattern looks like and some of the exceptions you might see. The best way to describe a traffic pattern is a racetrack. That's essentially what it looks like. A standard traffic pattern is rectangular in shape and contains left turns. A typical TPA, or otherwise known as a traffic pattern altitude, is 1,000 feet above the airport's elevation. As we said, there are some exceptions with traffic patterns having right turns or different altitudes, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Each leg of the pattern has a different name. So let's start with the runway and the direction you're taking off. This is called the departure leg. You may also hear it referred to as the upwind leg. You're often flying into the wind or upwind. When you turn off the departure leg, you turn into the crosswind leg. This leg is perpendicular to the runway. As you turn off that, you turn into the next leg, which is the downwind. In the downwind, you are parallel to the runway, and theoretically the wind is coming from your tail. You are downwind. After you turn off the downwind, you turn to base leg. Just like the crosswind, the base leg is also perpendicular to the runway. And then finally, you turn onto the last leg as you line up with the runway, and this is referred to as final. Just a key note here, there's no such thing as left or right final. Please don't ever say that on the radio. So now let's talk about some of those exceptions we see. There are some airports that have non-standard patterns. Let's first take a look at Clemson-Oconee County Airport, or Kilo Charlie Echo Uniform. If we take a look at the airport flight directory under runway 7, we can see that it is noted to have right traffic. This means instead of flying a traffic pattern with left turns, flying the traffic pattern for runway 7 will contain right turns, looking like this. The idea is still the same, just the opposite direction of what you'd fly with left turns. Another example of a non-standard pattern can be found at my home airport of Greenville Downtown, or Kilo Golf Mike Uniform. Golf Mike Uniform is a towered airport, so typically the tower will instruct us on whether to fly a left or a right traffic pattern. But the airport directory denotes that runway 19 is right traffic, so if the tower were closed or not operating, we would fly a right traffic pattern for runway 19. Golf Mike Uniform is also unique in the fact that the traffic pattern altitude is not 1,000 feet above the airport elevation. Under the airport remarks in the airport flight directory, there's a note that says the TPA is 800 feet AGL for light aircraft. GMU's elevation is 1,000 feet, so this means the pattern is at 1,800 feet, as opposed to what would normally be a pattern of 2,000 feet. Alright, now that we've talked about the traffic pattern, each leg, and some unique patterns we might see, let's fly it in our 172 Skyhawk. We'll start by departing from runway 23 at Pickens County Airport, Kilo Lima, Quebec Kilo. We'll fly straight out on the heading of 230 on the departure leg until we reach 500 feet above the airport elevation. Once we reach that point, we can begin our turn to crosswind. Remember, crosswind is perpendicular to the runway, so 90 degrees to the left should be our heading for crosswind, which is 140. Now I have the simulator set to have no wind in this video, but keep in mind in the real world, you would need to hold necessary wind correction to ensure you're tracking 90 degrees off the runway. We'll fly briefly on the crosswind and then begin our turn into the downwind. A good rule of thumb is to keep the downwind about 1 mile from the airport. Also remember, the downwind is parallel to the runway, just the reciprocal of the heading we departed from. So in this case, we should be heading 050. Once we reach pattern altitude, which here at Pickens is 2,000 feet, we'll level off and we'll continue to fly that in the downwind until we reach the 1,000-foot markers for runway 23. Once we reach this point, we'll begin to slow and configure for landing. Start by reducing power to 1500 RPM and holding altitude to slowly bleed off the airspeed until it reaches the white arc. Once we're in the white arc, we can add 10 degrees of flaps. Now, your approach speed can vary, but for this video we're going to aim to maintain an airspeed of around 70 knots. But also, of course, don't forget to do your normal landing checklist, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to keep it abbreviated and keep it simple. Once we reach the point where the 1,000-foot marker is 45 degrees off the back of our wing, we can begin to turn to the base leg. And remember, the base leg is perpendicular to the runway, so 90 degrees before the runway should put us on a heading of 320. And once we're established on base, we will add our second notch of flaps. Now finally, we will make our turn into the final leg as we line up with the runway. Utilize the poppy lights if you need them or if your airport has them, and help judge your descent. If you're too high, feel free to reduce power and lower the nose as needed, but also if you're too low, just add some power to help you maintain or hold that altitude until you get back on a good nice glide slope down to the runway. Once landing is assured and you know for a fact you're going to make the runway, slowly begin to work the power out to idle and give a nice smooth flare as the aircraft gently settles onto the runway. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you learned something, be sure to drop a like or a sub. If you got more questions or you want me to go more in depth on stuff, feel free to leave a comment below. I'm always looking for new video ideas for topics to talk about, so be sure to leave those recommendations down in the comments. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.